Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you saw that little lead-in intro there, which I think that's there because I had a complaint last Friday that we were episode number 151 and we didn't get a special intro. So we're now going to be showing you the 150. I'll see if we can get it updated on a daily basis. But it also pointed out, as always, that we got the PQ Award for Innovation. And I've been talking to a lot of people this week who have been watching our program, who are not ICB members, but are members of the press and various other things. And they're really quite excited by it all. And I think it's great that we've done it. So great. So we're actually number 153. We're only doing this one program this week, but we have got a couple of quite busy weeks coming up. As always, I have with me today the inimitable Jacquie Mount, who has let it be known that her season of white paper responses is slowly coming to an end. So now she's going to be doing some more technical Tuesdays. So that's great. Jacquie, they've always been very popular and there's plenty of technical stuff to keep you busy.
Yes, unfortunately, we've done very few recently. We did the IR35, but I do want to get back into those and get some sessions going. So I'm about to start talking to the marketing team and yourself and Garry and sort out what's needed. So yeah, what I would say is anything that you particularly want, bump it up in the chat line today and we'll see about adding it to the list. And I'm also possibly looking about doing some revision topics in the bookkeeping VAT field again, not too basic, but we'll see where that goes. Yeah, so just about to start planning that.
Well, I noticed a very interesting piece of information about the world post Monday when everything drops off, and somebody said, should I continue to wear my mask? And the response came back, you don't have to wear your mask, but if you're not, I would suggest you cover your mouth anyway. So that sounds like a bit of very easy to understand information there, but never mind. So, yeah, anyway, we won't worry about that. How are things going on the, well, we're hoping the end of the lockdown measures being operated by government. How's it looking, Jacquie?
Well, yes, as you all know, we sort of the England is due to start opening up further on Monday. I know Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland have other dates, but this is obviously what's happening in England. So businesses are open, and I would say as normal, but it's not going to be as normal because listening to the news, particularly down here where we've got unfortunately quite a rising number down here in Kent of cases, so things are not back to normal by any means. Funnily enough, where I live, it's tended to be quite high, but now it's way lowest of all in Kent and Sussex. So it's interesting. Maybe it's because of the age profile in this particular area that vast majorities have had all our jabs. So it is a slightly older age profile where I live, which is I'm almost one of the younger ones actually in the village. I think it looks like when you walk around, but that's lovely. So obviously with coronavirus and the various schemes that are around, the CJRS furlough scheme, watch out for that because we're now well into only claiming back 70% this month, and from the 1st of August we're down to claiming 60% back for August and September. And then the whole thing is due to come to an end at the end of September. Now, we don't know what's going to happen after that, whether the government will change their mind yet again. My reaction is probably they won't bring it back and change it, but you never know. But interestingly enough, what came out from HMRC this week, some examples and emails, as you know, that I get, is they were looking at the July to August changeover. And there are some examples. If you go on to gov.uk and look at what you can claim back for CJRS, the standard links. If you're not sure where to go onto the website, look at the COVID page, and there's some links in there to take you to various parts in gov.uk. And they gave an example of a pay period that stretches over the 31st of July, 1st of August date. So of course, if you're doing a claim across, you have a pay period across that end of month, you have to sort of do it in two separate slots and claim it at separate rates. So watch out that because it can get quite complex at the moment. Couple of small notices coming through. One is a technical notice. The HMRC are closing down their Making Tax Digital service over the weekend to do some updates. Now, this happens on a fairly regular basis. Now, hopefully none of you are trying to do MTT returns, but it's interesting this time the times that they're closing down. I'm not sure if this is correct, but I assume it is. It's from 4 o'clock on Saturday PM until 4 PM on Monday. So Saturday afternoon, Sunday, unless you're working, you won't want to access it. But it does look as though the whole of the MTD system is down until 4 PM on Monday. And that includes uploading your any MTD returns under ITSA. I think the VAT might be all right. I think this is ITSA, but it might be the whole thing. So watch out for that if you're trying to do something on Monday. Now, just an interesting one came in. I think we will put this up on our website. Not quite sure. It only came in yesterday, and I'm not quite sure where we're going to put it yet. But as you are aware, if you are qualified, sufficiently qualified, and you have to have the level 4 SAT for this, and you're doing capital gains tax returns on the sale of a second property or relevantly taxed property, that the capital gain on that has to be declared within 30 days of the completion of the sale. Now, just to confirm a few bits here, it may very well be that tax that's paid within 30 days is only an estimate because you don't have all the figures, you know. So the estimate of the tax is made. And then at some later stage, when you've got all your figures, you either go back into the return and have amended return, or if you're doing a self-assessment return at the end of the year, you can adapt it during that and either pay the rest of the tax or claim any overpayment back. And there are some documents that HMRC have issued and asked us to share with you as members. And basically, it's an FAQ. So there's lots of questions there. I worked through them this morning. They're very interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak to the marketing team, and we will get something put up on the website, hopefully next week, depending on what their priorities are. So watch out for that through the Property Disposal Service. Now, again, there was a reminder came out from on some YouTube videos for IR35. Just a reminder, we did our Technical Tuesday with it. Just a reminder that if you go into YouTube and look at the gov.uk channel on that, there is a very useful IR35 video up on there on that. Now, I've actually got a couple of questions that have come in, one from a member and one actually from a friend who was doing this first one is to do with self-assessment tax returns and payments on account. Now, those of you who do SAT returns will know that if there is a payment on account, if you're doing the return and the tax for the year just completed has dropped drastically, you can click a button and actually reduce the payments on account, which we've all known and we've all done probably if it's feasible to do that and relevant to do that. But in this particular instance, when this individual did her tax return and came up with the tax calculations and looked at what she had to pay, she was expecting on the 31st of July to actually pay the second payment on account, which was a considerable amount. But the actual amount shown to pay was a lot less. It was a couple of £100 instead of £1,500 or something. And that was without amending the payment on account figures manually. Now, what we don't know yet is whether this is because there was credit on the system, which this particular person thinks there isn't, or whether once you've actually uploaded your new tax year, is there a new calculation that we're unaware of that automatically reduces the payment on account that's needed based on the balancing figure and what you might have paid on the 31st of January. So I'll be interested to know if anybody has got an answer to that one, and have you seen it before? I'm about to help this particular friend over the weekend, and we're going to look at this return and see exactly if I can find out what's gone wrong with it. But at the moment, that's all I have. So I just wondered if anyone else had come up against this. So that's my first query. Now, this one has come up. This one's come in with an email from Valerie, and thank you, Valerie, for this. I know you're watching this afternoon, and you emailed this in this morning to ask if I could raise this. So thank you very much for that. And if anybody else wants anything particular raised, then please do email in for my attention on this, and we will obviously raise it. Now, this one is to do with import VAT and postponed VAT accounting. Now, Valerie has an issue with the monthly postponed import VAT statements. And I know she's not the only one, because I know at least one other has that as well. So I'm just going to read parts of her email out. She said, I am diligently downloading my statements for one of the business clients, but I'm finding that a vast percentage of our imports do not appear on the statement. Out of a total of 83 imports, only 15 of them have appeared on the statement. Do you know why this is? My initial answer to that is no, I don't. Now, what Valerie's done is she's recorded the other invoices as reverse charge VAT, which we know it should do. But what it means is there is a considerable difference between what's being shown on the VAT return under reverse charge and what's actually on the downloaded statement. And there's another interesting situation that's arisen. This is as much a warning to everyone as anybody else, because it's to do with the value of the imports that may be coming in and the exchange rates. Because what Valerie says is, what she's doing is she's keeping track of her imports by the airway bill numbers to try and reconcile. The invoices are in euros. The VAT return converts them to sterling at one rate, and the statement shows them converted at another. Now, I think the answer to that one might be that the VAT return, the software will have a conversion rate built into it, which may or may not be different to the conversion rate that HMRC use. Now, HMRC issue a currency conversion rate weekly or monthly, and that's what you're supposed to use for your VAT return. So it's something that I always had an issue with, because on some of the software packages when I was doing this, and we're talking a long time ago now, admittedly, that it was very difficult to change the currency conversion rate at the time. So do watch out for that, because it might be a discrepancy between what HMRC want you to use and what the software is using, which may possibly be using it from the bank rate. I don't know, which could be a bit different. So question on that. Now, I know Valerie's not the first member to contact me on this, so I'm just trying to think. I can't remember who it was that contacted me first of all. I've had one or two. So if anybody else has got any of those, then pop everything up and we'll see if we can answer it. So that's all the notices I've got for today. And right,
Aaron Stearns has come in and said, hi, can we have something on partial exemption?
Yeah, I'm going to find someone. Yeah, I'll try and find someone to do that one.
VAT exempt as well. That's an interesting one, particularly when you're a not-for-profit like we are. It has its moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know how it works in theory. You know, we can do something on partial exemption.
And Nick Payne says, can you share the link to the AR35?
Yeah. I'll see if I can find it and I'll pop it up.
Great. And Joe
it's in
Wheeler,
my email, so
have you got that there? I have a client whose income dropped dramatically in 2021, and HMRC advised that once a new tax return is submitted, the payment on account will be recalculated.
So maybe it is automatically recalculated. So thank you for that, Joe. I'm going to have a look at that at the weekend and look at the history and things. So we're doing that tomorrow morning. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's great.
Now, Jane has come through, and unfortunately her surname is so long that it's chopped off by the time it came in. So she's I presume it's Thornthwaite. So please, Jane, correct me if I'm wrong. Hi, Jackie. Do we know whether the job retention bonus will be available when the job retention scheme closes at the end of September? I've already had a couple of clients asking about it.
I haven't heard anything about it, but I just have this funny feeling that it's not, because I think they would probably have announced it by now, and they cancelled it when we were 6 months back. And I haven't seen that it's going to come out again. And I think it would probably have been announced by now, but I will chase on that.
Pauline Chapman says, hi, is it possible to view the Wages Wednesday webinar from the 7th of July? I missed it and cannot seem to find it on the ICB website. Alex is anchoring today, and I presume he'll give us the nod at the moment, but I believe that you can find it on YouTube.
Yes, but you can get it on. It is a member-only one, and you do have to either have the designatory letters PM DIP, or you have to be a payroll agent. Now, if you've got those, if you go onto the resources page on the website and go into the payroll agent, on the right-hand side of the screen is a link to the Wages Wednesday webinars, and all of Ian's webinars are there. But you do, that one is limited to payroll agents and people with PMDIP. And Claire's
says I've seen
the link's gone up there, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Alex has just put up the link on there to the payroll webinars.
Oh, great.
And Claire Claire's come back and said, I've seen the reduced payments on account, but HMRC's letters say they sent didn't show the reduced amount. Very confusing for the clients. I completely agree. I think there's just so much going on at HMRC at the moment. There are so many changes going on in the pipeline. I think that they're really struggling to keep it all together. And a lot of the meetings I've had this week have been on the communication side and how they're trying to improve their communication. So that's certainly one they need to look at.
Right.
Let me just quickly see if I can find this link to that in my emails, Gary, if you're all right for a minute. I might still have it.
No, absolutely. So whilst you're doing that, we had a very successful attendance at the UK FIU webinar on Monday about the SARS regime. Thank you for that. A lot of the information they gave, you should already know. One of the questions at the beginning was, I thought, a little bit confusing. It asked whether or not you had seen the booklet that talked about the SAR regime. And a lot of you actually said no. But rather than just give you the booklet, ICB produced that as part of its standard issue of information and detail. So you will have seen it, you will have had access to it, you still have access to it, but it wasn't as a booklet. So I think that might have confused things. It was interesting to note that of the sort of 500 or so people that watched that, over 78% were actually from ICB. And then they had a few people from outside, and about whatever the rest is, 20% or so from IFA. So I think that gave us a good response. I thought it was quite useful in places. I was actually very pleased with some of the responses that came from the FIU's own representative on the panel, Kuram Javid, and I'm pleased to say that I'm in contact with him, and he's going to come on and do a special program with me so that we can dive a little bit into some of the information he was giving, because it backs up a lot of the information which I've always tried to provide in the Inspire tours, but it's been a little bit off the, on the hoof. And I've never been quite sure whether I was completely right, but I'm pleased to hear that everything he said confirmed it. So the way that you hand over dodgy clients or don't hand over clients, or when you report and all that sort of stuff, we will be discussing. And one thing that I will be covering, and something I'd like you to think about, I am constantly told that as bookkeepers, you fall out with your accountants because they seem to do things differently. They change everything once you've done it, they mess about with it, and you think they do things wrong. And I'm always using this in meetings, but I've got no anecdotal evidence to prove what I'm saying. So I think, oh, it's Gary Carter going off on a tangent again. So please, if you're finding that you are having any sort of problem with your accountant, can you drop a line, drop it to customer services, because otherwise I'll miss it, but drop it to customer services and head up further to my point. Not just now, but at any time in the future, if you're having a problem with an accountant, this really needs to be discussed and sorted out, because the accountancy bodies are saying they really want to work with bookkeepers, and they don't know that this is happening, and either they're delusional or they really don't believe it's happening. I don't know. But I need evidence. And so I can't just say, oh, well, lots of people complain, because lots doesn't mean anything at all. And so we want data. So if you've got any problems, we have had a couple this week that we're now trying to get that sorted, where people have given accounts up to an accountant to be finalised for the year end, and they've been completely changed, and therefore taxation altered, etc., etc. I mean, obviously, the big secret is, if it's a micro business or a small business, get the exams in and do it yourself, and then it can't be altered. But if you are working with a firm of accountants, and I don't want to stop you doing that if that's how you feel happiest working, just make sure, please, that what you send up to them bears some resemblance to what they finally submit. And if not, just to remind you, please send some information through to us. we will never quote your name or anything like that. It's all anonymized. I need it anonymized. I need it obviously to be able to refer back to you and have a chat just in case I haven't understood what you've said or I want further information or clarification, but that won't be used. But of course, if you find that something is being done which you think is totally incorrect, it's fraudulent or it's tax evasion or avoidance or something like that, you do need to put in a SAR. And that's why when Khurram comes on to ICB TV, that's something I will be putting to him. But please come up with your questions about the day-to-day practical stuff. The problem with a lot of webinars, like the one on Monday, is that it's high-level stuff that they give you a list of XXX 7757 XXX codes and all this sort of stuff. That's fine. But first of all, it's that decision that you make as bookkeepers as to, is this actually worthy of a SAR or am I doing it wrong? So he answered a few questions and a few came out in the panel discussion there, but it's something that we can never get too much of because the information needs to be absolutely to the point and correct. And can I just thank Andy from ICB for jumping in at the last minute. Mike Jardine has unfortunately had to go into hospital and Mike was called upon with about an hour's notice to answer questions, and I don't think he felt quite comfortable answering on behalf of ICB. He's an intelligence officer, but what he does is goes through people's records and he looks for things that aren't correct. He's not exactly then the person that has to deliver the message to the general public or to ICB members. So, but he jumped in and he came up with some good answers, but yeah, I think he was a bit wary of giving responses on behalf of ICB that he hadn't checked out first. So anyway, but a good webinar. Thank you for all of those who joined in. It's supposed to be a series of 4, so we've had 1, there'll be another 3 more. I'm waiting to see what the topics of those are and when they will be. You will be informed. Likewise, as soon as I have a date for Khurram to come and talk to us on a straightforward ICB bookkeeper program, then you'll get plenty of notice on that. Jackie.
There's a couple of comments on exactly on that. Margaret Crawford. Hello, Margaret. Margaret, I assume this is to do with the webinar because I can't think of what else it could be. Lost a bit of interest when she didn't know which booklets they were talking about. You mentioned the booklet numbers on that one, Garry, I think.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they do produce booklets and you can send off and get a free booklet and all the rest of it, but actually you want it in one place, one receptacle, and that is ICB's website, so it's there. You have had emails about it, and I know that a very, very large percentage of our members have opened it to have a look at it and refer back to it when they have to put in SARs, because unfortunately some of our members do. It's not in huge numbers. I think last year, it was around the 20 to 30 mark. So it's always there if you need it. So let's hope that you don't, but if you do,
and
it's always there.
Suzanne is asking if it was recorded. She's waiting to hear back from us. I'm not sure it was it that one recorded for reviewing, that particular webinar?
I think it was recorded. I'm not sure whether they've recorded it for us, and therefore it's up to us to distribute it, or whether they were going to do it. I will check on that. Alex, if you're listening, if you can remind me to do that, I will check. But I'm speaking to Khurram on Monday anyway, so I'll check with him because he probably knows as much as anybody.
Okay, couple of questions here. One from Margaret again. A charity client of ours is on the VAT margin scheme. We outsource this to a company in South Africa who are very familiar with Xero. It's a complicated process to produce an accurate VAT return. Now, the only way I think that you can do this in a software package is as I understand this, is to do this through a job number. So if you can record everything that goes into the job number, and then somehow you've got to record your VAT against that job number and transfer it over. So I've got a feeling, I have never seen software that does the VAT margin calculation when you put everything in. The way I used to do it was to calculate it outside, because you obviously have to keep a list on the VAT margin scheme of the of all the costs that you're claiming against for your profits, and then do a manual VAT adjustment to actually pay the the VAT on the profit on that sale, and that can be quite a long-winded process. We used to do it when we were producing artworks with artists, and that could possibly be a 6 to 9 month process minimum between the start of all the costs coming in and the actual selling of the work under the VAT margin scheme. So I used to do it manually or on a spreadsheet, keeping all the records for each. You're supposed to actually have a stock book that records each item and the cost everything against. Now, back in the day, I used to do this manually. I had a manual stock book, but I'm sure there is a way now, and somebody must have come up with a system for doing this digitally. Because I suppose once we get into MTD, we've got to start looking at the digital records for the VAT. So interesting, that one. I don't think I can answer it anymore unless anybody else has ever done VAT margin and has got an answer to that one, Margaret. And Maggie is asking, going back to the VAT statement for postponed VAT, which value should be used on the VAT return? We use the HMRC rate when entering our invoices. Should we adjust to the statement if there is a difference? Well, I would think if you're using the HMRC rates, there should not be a difference. So I'm going to have to follow up on this one. I think that's all I can say is I'll try and see if I can come up with an answer for you on this one. Oh, and Margaret's come back and said it's very manual, Jackie. Reports are exported from Xero and checked that way. Yeah, that's the only way I've ever found out of doing it, is to obviously when you're looking at margin VAT, all your costs go in at Xero rate.
Actually, Margaret raises an interesting point there, and that is about farming accounts work out to other countries. I know Margaret actually comes from South Africa, so I'm sure she's got loads of contacts out there. We're getting a lot of approaches from particularly Indian companies who want to set up in the UK and have an office in the UK, but actually do all the work back in India, where in some cases they're paying the equivalent of about £5 per hour for bookkeeping and accounting and even auditing work. You know, it's quite incredible, really. And I'm not sure what ICB members will think of that. It's not as if we don't have plenty of clients around at the moment, but whether or not you think it's morally incorrect. I have noticed on one that we've been trying to sort out at the moment that the rules that were applied to the accounts when they were carried out in India are not the same. And also the GDPR rules are not quite the same in India. So if you are thinking of doing that, you need to take a lot into consideration, but importantly, what is going to happen to that information, because you are giving out confidential information to another country. So are you covered for that? Just make sure, please, that you don't slip up with that and think you're saving a bit of money. Right, Jackie.
I was just looking up, you're asking me questions I don't know the answer to today. When Daniel says, when selling an overseas property, are you required to pay capital gains tax within 30 days as with the UK property? Again, I'm going to have to do a bit of research on that one, Daniel, and I'll get back to you. I'm not sure that the 30 days for selling foreign property is necessarily there, but I would have to check on that. So I'll try and get back to you, Daniel.
I think generally speaking, listen to what Jackie is saying and also to what our external advisors are saying, is that we can see quite a major shift in micro and small businesses towards a one-stop shop bookkeeping service to look after all of their accounts, everything that they're doing, which is absolutely fantastic. But it does mean that we're moving into areas where you perhaps don't have the same experience or you want to check your knowledge. So the queries that we're getting, and I think Jackie will back me up on this, are just getting so much more involved. And it's fantastic to see that you're doing this work. And I'm glad that you are checking it out. So we don't want to stop you checking it out. No. But I think ICB is having to look at the type of advice that it is able to give. We want to give the right advice, but we need to make sure that we've got the right people to give that extended advice. Because in the old days, it was, is this a debit or a credit? And, you know, what do I do with money? Where do I put it? What code do I use for this, that, and the other? I think those days have gone, really. It's completely different. So we need a whole new set of people in the background there to answer your questions. So I'm looking at it at the moment, and others will be looking at it, but we're just trying to find the best way of serving our new ultra professional bookkeeper that is, well, basically your accountants to the micro and small business sector. And bearing in mind that of the entire 6 million businesses in this country, 5.8 million of them are micro and small. There's plenty of business out there, and we don't want to stop you taking that business on and looking after people right the way through the whole system, from getting their accounts started to getting their accounts finished. It's brilliant, really well.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that, because I haven't done these taxations for a long while now, since I was in practice, and took the decision not to keep myself personally up to date with everything because I'm tied up with HMRC and stuff. I think we have managed to answer all of the questions, but it is taking a bit longer to get the answers to you, because sometimes I have to pass you on to someone, or I have to take some advice, but we are answering them, but it is taking it a little bit longer than perhaps with some of the more straightforward ones.
I think it's the same, for example, with payroll, where you, Jackie, and others have been answering payroll. Now we've brought Ian in, because actually the number of payroll queries, because more people are doing payroll, suddenly rocketed, and things were moving on so fast, and we didn't want to say to people, "Oh, we don't know the answer." But going away to find the answer does take a bit more time. So now we're bringing somebody that knows straight off the cuff what it is they need to say and to give the advice. So it's rushing along there a little bit, but so be it. That's brilliant.
Oh, here's an interesting one from Shelley. Oh, and Shelley, between you and I, I'm still trying to find the answer to your payroll query. So that's another one there that Shelley's, but I'm still trying to get an answer to, because I don't know. But Shelley is saying, we have a client who wants to rent the flat above their office, and they want to allow their staff to stay there if they are working late nights or needing to start work early hours of the morning for work purposes. Would you say this is a benefit in kind and needs to be reported on a P11D? My initial reaction was yes, but I think the answer might be no. And again, it's one I'm going to have to look at, because I think that could constitute subsistence. Because if they were coming up to London to be there early, say, and they had to stay overnight, I think it would be not a benefit, it would be a cost of their travel and subsistence if they're away from home for more than, is it 10 hours, I think. Certainly, for example, when I was asked to travel with Garry around the country, obviously hotels and that are paid by your employer, and that doesn't go against you for a benefit in kind. So I have a funny feeling that might be the same way, but you're going to have to justify it not being a benefit. Obviously, if someone says, "Oh, I want to come out because I want to go out tonight somewhere and see a show, can I stay?" That's a benefit. But if they're being called in to work late hours over and above what they normally do, I think that might be come under subsistence and cost to the business of bringing them in to do a job.
Probably also need to look at how the employer is putting that through the books as well, just to make sure it's not being trying to get a cheap flat on through the books or something or other.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, if they're renting, presumably they're renting the flat, which happens to be over there. Yeah, they want to rent the flat that's above the property and use it for the staff. And again, I think you're going to have to justify what the use is. But a standard going in for work, I don't think that's going to be a benefit in kind, because you could. Interesting, that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the email address to use when reporting problems with accountants? Can't find it on the ICB contacts. That's because I've just made it up. No, I've just had the information. Nobody knew I was going to do that. So I know they're quick here, but they haven't quite worked it out yet. If you'll send it to, let me see if I can get you that in a couple of minutes. Before I commit myself, Alex, can you find out which is the best one? I mean, I presume it's membership or something like that. Yeah, if Alex in the background there, if you can quickly put something up for everybody, we'll find out what it is. I mean, it'll go to the standard customer services, I think, and then they'll decide whether it comes to me or goes to somebody else. It may, of course, lead to a SAR, which is what we're saying about the meeting that we're having, or that we've had this week as well. But at the moment, it's mainly for information. I want to know exactly what's going on, because you know, I've used so many stories over the years. I just want to make sure that I've got them right. And I don't want to get caught out when I'm hauled up before the minister or something or other, and asked to well, you know, say what's really going on out there.
Shelley's come back, and this will resound with most of the members. Her comment is, I have contacted HMRC for an answer and been given different answers by different people. Well, we all know that one, Shelley. So I think you've got to justify. Obviously, you're going to keep records of what, where, and how. But again, I'll float that one and see if I can get a response back to that one, Shelley.
It's a difficult one, that, because actually I was talking to a member yesterday, and she was saying that she'd had a problem. She'd spoken to one of our external advisors, got some information, then done a sort of a checkup herself and found something slightly different. So went back to our external advisors through the helpline, and they were sort of debating the fact, but then said, yes, it's probably right that way. So a lot of these things are so grey that we have to come up with an opinion. And that's a lot of the time what our advisors will do. A lot of it is black and white, but there is a lot of stuff out there that's grey. So you may well, from ICB even, get slightly differing points. And I also know from talking to one of our advisors, I was having a chat with one of our advisors, the girl that was on the phone recently, and she was saying that somebody had come on and claimed that she'd been given two different answers, but actually what had happened was she'd given a very slightly different question.
Yes.
Now the questions were actually emailed, so we've got it and we can look what they've done. It's a very, very slight difference in English, and if I remember correctly, it's where the comma was placed in a rather long sentence, but therefore that's why there were two different bits of information given out. They were only slightly different, so it wasn't as if, you know, we'd said pay tax or not pay tax or something like that. But so it is a difficult one, and you know, these people, they have years and years of experience. They keep up to date as much as they can. I hope they get it right 99.9% of the time. All right.
Talking of advice and guidance, I was just going to say, talking of advice and guidance, there is still a big debate going on among the forums and HMRC and the professional bodies. It's about what constitutes guidance and advice and how much you can rely on that comes from HMRC. So that slightly different wording to get a different answer can be quite crucial, actually.
It's very like the difference between an estimate and a quote. And I was told very early on that if you give an estimate, it is only that. But if you give a quote, that is in concrete. Yeah. So just a different word and you're caught.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Quotes and estimates I used to have a client who was a carpet fitter and was adamant that they sent out estimates, not quotes, because if they had a quote and there was something else cropped up that they had to do, they couldn't be held to it. So it's always an estimate.
And also when we're doing our professional conduct regulations, we were told that there is a difference between must and should. Should is on the balance of probabilities, you should do it this way. Must is regardless, you must do it. And we've had to actually go through the BCR a little bit and just check whether we've slipped up and said should instead of must, and or shall, and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, the English language is wonderful until you come to try.
And now you know why I never studied law.
And we've got an answer here for Peter and for everybody else. If you've got a problem with an accountant, you think something is wrong, and you want to just mention it, that is memberservices@bookkeepers.org.uk. Now, that is not where you put in something that you think is money laundering or fraud. That goes directly to compliance, and you can speak to the compliance department or send it into compliance at. But this is for something that you feel you're being badly treated by an accountant, or the client is being badly advised, and it's a starter. But that also, having read it, I might say, well, look, that looks to me like actually that's a fraud or that's an evasion, and therefore I want to pass you on to our compliance department. Now, don't be put off by that, because if it is something which is wrong, illegal, or whatever, you are obliged to make a disclosure anyway. But we're here to help you make that decision as to whether a disclosure is necessary. But so, I know a lot of people out there think, well, I don't ring the institute because it'll be a black mark on my record. That's not quite how it works. Obviously, if you are doing something which is completely wrong and illegal, we can't say, oh, well, you've told us, so it's okay now. But if you're coming to us for that sort of advice, we're on your side, obviously, and we're going to try and help you make the best decision you possibly can. It amazes me, as I've said many, many times before, that you'll ask part qualified students on a forum, but you won't come to the institute. So, you get wrong information, and then you wonder why. But so we are here for you. Definitely 100% here to look after you and make sure that you get it right. But, as I say, it's like an insurance. You can't insure yourself against breaking the law. You can only insure yourself against making a bad decision or a wrong decision. So come to us before it gets too far and make sure you get the right information from day one.
And Alex has also put up the confidential email address, confidential@bookkeepers.org.uk. So that will go straight through to the compliance team. Which
just goes to show I've never had to put in a SAR myself.
Just I'd raise that
case. Compliance. That's confidential@bookkeepers.org. Now, it is confidential because actually that doesn't go through the normal staff members. It goes directly to the compliance department, where we've got police trained former UK Financial Intelligence Unit officers whose job it is to go through and work with you to make sure that you make the right decisions. So you're not going to get somebody who just happens to pick up the phone and say, oh, that doesn't sound very good, does it? It's not what we do.
No. Absolutely. And just a confirmation for those of you who haven't picked it up, that the UK FIU webinars were recorded, but it is in their hands, not ours, and it's for them to release them. I think Alex has just put a notice. It's not guaranteed that you will get it. So, however, when Garry does one for us, you will be able to view that one because that will be on our site afterwards.
Yeah. I'll check. I think the intention was to send it to us, but normally with these things, they have to go through and redact anything that they want to take back.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think I've got anything else. I did have a conversation with a member this morning. I rang again about this Brexit VAT is cropping up all over the place at the moment, and this was to do with a client who is based in Ireland, not Northern Ireland, Ireland, who of course is still in the EU. And we were discussing, it was actually a triangulation issue where they are selling wine, which is in a bonded warehouse in Portugal, to an Eastern European country, which is not in the EU. And we were talking about the VAT and everything else, this, that, and the other. And the accountant had advised that they would have to register with the Portuguese VAT authority in order to do this. And we've asked the member to go back to the client to find out why the accountant said that, because at the moment, of course, we have the new, from the 1st of July, we have the one-stop shop. So we're trying to find out, and the members promised to come back to me and let me know whether, in fact, the accountant is just a little bit out of date because he hasn't realised that the one-stop shop is operational for selling. And this is, we think he thinks it's business to consumer, whereas this is business to business in Russia, and which doesn't help the situation. And
yeah, because I thought the whole idea of a bonded warehouse was technically it isn't in that country.
No, it's not. And so it's, which is why
it's
in a bonded warehouse in Portugal, and it's being sold by an Irish company to Russia. So as Garry said earlier, our queries are getting so much more complicated. And between us, we think we came up with a consensus of opinion, but we're just going to try and get it backed up and checked. But we think we sorted out how to do it. So
gone are the days of can I sell coal to Newcastle? Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whilst you're looking, see if any more come up, just a couple of things that I've been working on recently. We have recently signed up to the Commonwealth benchmarks on anti-corruption and working with countries around the Commonwealth to try and sort out some of the many problems they have. I know in this country we sometimes think our politicians are not worth the time and various other things for some of the things they get up to, but in other countries it is a lot worse. Money changes hands, and small islands out in the Caribbean change hands and various other things. So it's quite a big job. I mean, I don't know how much you all know about the Commonwealth. We are recognised by the Commonwealth. We're the only bookkeeping organisation we recognise by the Commonwealth. And it is now not anything to do with the old, the empire. This is a collection of people who probably most of them were in the empire, but it's now a voluntary association of groups, a bit like a voluntary Europe, if you like. And it's coming a little bit more into its own now that we're out of Europe. It's now a big market. There are 53 countries out there, and a quarter of the world's trade goes through there. So this is why you'll be seeing a lot more Australian bananas and all this sorts of stuff again, and a lot of Australian wine. But anyway, the reason I mention it is I'm working with a couple of other professional bodies, because what we're thinking is that the way to get legislation spread from the UK to the rest of the Commonwealth is to use the professional bodies, and we're going to be one of those bodies. And I mean, there are 17 benchmarks, a lot of which are not really of use to us, but it talks about everything about political lobbying. We've had that in this country. So yeah, it's the case over there. Public officials implement regulations which are designed to ensure the integrity of public officials. Again, there's nothing to guarantee integrity in a lot of these countries. But it does cover things like money laundering. It covers things like ethics. And at the moment, I'm working with, we've got anti-corruption, reporting corruption, standards and certification. We want to make sure that people get certified by proper relevant authorities like ICB when they get their qualification. In many countries, people just decide to set up a certification process. Okay, what do you want to be certified in? Well, I quite fancy brain surgery. All right, that's $250. Here we are, here's your certificate. We're trying to stop all of that. And one of the things that we're hoping that we will be supported throughout the Commonwealth with is Benchmark 23, which is permit, promote and support the establishment and operation of professional institutions and business associations. So we do need their assistance and guidance. I have invited Baroness Patricia Scotland, who's the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat, to come onto the programme. And because of the dreaded COVID, she is either very, very busy or has got a perfectly built excuse. So she has said that they will look at this and come back on shortly, because I think it would be really worth doing. So that's part. A lot of what I'm getting involved with nowadays is, like it or not, legislation. And we've got another piece that's just going out, and we've just agreed to sign up to it. And it's called the Accountancy Sector Fraud Charter. Now, this is a charter that has been put together by the accountancy sector. It's been self-written, if you like, but now it's going through the Home Office, and it's very much what we'd expect you to know and do anyway, but it's, I think, probably gets the government another ticks in the box somewhere, or brownie points, whatever you want to call them. But we think it's just part of what we do. And Alex, if you're still there, if you can put up a slide, I'll give you a quick run through of what this sector covers, what this charter covers. To be honest with, you've put a nice heading on the front of it as well. Thank you, Alex. That was very nice. It wasn't like that. I just gave him some stuff. So if you go on to the actions here, so you'll see, and I'll rush through these because they're quite long, but to drive greater transparency of fraud threats across the accountancy sector. It's so that you have a better idea of what to look for. And one of the big complaints I've had about the anti-money laundering regime for a long, long time is it never seems very practical. It talks about huge fraud, money laundering activities when they're financing despots in weird countries and all the rest of it, and it's lots of drugs and everything else, and it needs to be brought down to a level which I think makes our members, you the ICB members, understand what's going on there. So improved information, absolutely. And the outcome of this is hopefully that we will share information between supervisors, between law enforcers, and then we can actually share that with you properly. Such a lot of what we get as a supervisor, which is really, really important, very, very useful, we're told is private and confidential because it's got names or it's got people in it or something or other. So quite often what I've done in the past is taken people's names out of it, but use them as examples. And, you know, I've had a few people raising their eyebrows at this, but to be honest with you, if you don't know what to expect, how on earth can you combat it or say, well, this is wrong? The second action is we're going to create a fraud awareness toolkit. Sounds very posh. I mean, basically, it's the sort of information which we already give you on the website for everything else. We will be working this through. It's not ready yet because, as I said, we're working on it. And Mike and his team are already bringing this information together to get some educational material. And Lucy Brown at the moment is working on a test on ethics and anti-money laundering and various other things. And this is going to be brought in. So that's something which all new applicants for a practice license will need to complete. I have mentioned this is coming in on occasions before, but she's almost there, I think. And must congratulate Lucy. She's just gone through her first 3 months. And after a lot of persuasion, she's agreed to stay on. She's had a very busy 3 months and a baptism of fire, I think. But nonetheless, she's done a great job. And it's really good to have somebody with, if you like, a foot in both camps. You know, she's been in practice. She's had the good, the bad, and the ugly of practice. And now she's getting the good, the bad, and the ugly of ICB to really make her day. And yeah, I'm getting emails at all times of night from her as she sits down with a spare few minutes to try and sort things through. But anyway, thank you for that. So the toolkit will be there. Again, it's like all the templates and all the advice that ICB gives you. It's to give you a one-stop shop so that you'll be able to look at it and say, right, that's what I've just seen. I now know that this fits into fraud, so therefore I've got to do something about it. And then there'll be a list of actions which you need to take and when you call us and what we will do for you to help on that. The third action is enhancing Companies House data. Now, I've been working with Companies House for the last 2 years or so because one of the big concerns with Companies House has always been that anybody can register a company in the UK. You can ring in from overseas, you can set something up, you can do something on the web, and all of a sudden, you know, you've got a base in the UK, or you appear to have a base in the UK. And those of you who came to the Inspire tours, or last of the live Inspire tours, which I've forgotten how many years ago that was, 2 years ago, probably 2019, would it be, or 18? I can't remember. Anyway, you will remember the slide I showed you, which was very kindly provided by the Scottish accountants, showing you how many bogus companies have been registered in Scotland, just in Scotland. And off the top of my head, I think it was over 250,000. So these are companies that are set up with no intention of being traded properly, but they just put funny money through it, as I call it, launder money through it, and away it goes. But in addition to that, they sell products through there which people buy and never get, and all this sort of stuff. So as bookkeepers, it's another thing that you need to look out for. But actually, if you see it, it will just be part of your normal day-to-day stuff. We don't expect you to go up turning stones and looking for whatever crawls out. That's not what this is about. It's because you are so important to this, because you're at the chalk face, you're at the sharp end, or whatever you want to call it, because you're seeing accounts from day one. You see actual invoices, or even if they're only electronic, you're seeing transactions go through. You know what a business is doing. You know where they're getting their money from. You know where their money is going to. And that is why you are critically important to this. And the fourth action is just basically to increase fraud awareness and change customer behavior. Now, this is something which you can then talk to your clients about, because one of the things that we're finding on our advice lines at the moment is that quite often you're asking not about how you should handle something, but how your client should handle something that's just happened. And the client turns to you because you're probably the only person with any sort of financial knowledge at all in the company. They don't have the resource, you do, and therefore, you know, it's making everybody aware of what's going on. Silly things like, you know, as we've said before, one of our members was telephoned her client had been hurt in an accident overseas, and the hospital needed some money very quickly because he needed all sorts of scans. She didn't fall for it, but somebody got a lot of information about the client, the person, the fact that he was on holiday, who his bookkeeper was. You know, it happens, and I'm part of the transparency task force, which is looking at all these sorts of cons that are on at the moment, where people are losing their pensions, people are having money drained out of their accounts, and everybody presumes it's sort of old age pensioners who don't know any better, or people, you know, old people, all this sort of stuff. It really isn't. You know, we've got stories that we get as part of Transparency International that it's people just conned out of money, and people are a little gullible, you know, and men, women, children, you know, what children can be coerced into doing without their parents knowing about it is just incredible. So we have to look after this. So that's basically what the charter covers. Thank you, Alex. I have said I don't think it's really a charter, because to my mind a charter is bigger, beefier, and has got some real outcomes at the end of it which we can be judged against, but we'll wait and see. I'm hoping government doesn't see it as a reason for creating OPBAS 2 or anything silly, to see whether we back that up with action, because we will do anyway, but we'll see how that goes. And I have a meeting. I was to have a meeting this morning. It's been budged back to 4 o'clock today, but I have a meeting with the lady that's running this from the Home Office, and we're going to sign up and say, yeah, we're behind it. But actually, this is our day job anyway. We do this all the time. So, yeah, as I say, somebody somewhere is probably getting a brownie point for this. But what they're doing is picking up bits of everything and charterizing it or sectioning it off so that they can put a team behind it to work. So, but it's a major problem. It's billions of pounds worth of fraud. It's been lost to fraud every year. The fraud that I'm interested in, and again, I'll be asking the head of fraud that I'm speaking to this afternoon, is, you know, about the people who are not paying their proper tax and how they're hiding money and all the rest of it. Just normal everyday people. You know, where are we right in making that a SAR? Does that go to somewhere else? We were told at one stage to report to Fraud UK. They weren't quite sure that was right. Then we were told to send an email to report an unlicensed trader.gov.uk, and I remember being completely shocked by that when I had to give you that information at the Inspire tour. I said, I can't really see, but I'm told that's where it goes. Lo and behold, a couple of you reported to it, and we were then told, well, hold on, that's not us. So if it's not you, then who the hell is it? You know, we can't be expecting to make this up as we go along. We've got to know. I'm expected to give you proper information. Jackie, you know, you can't ring Jackie. Jackie say, oh, well, I think it's them. Have a go. If it bounces back, come back. That's not how they work. You know, we can't do it like that. And far too many times we're not given that information. Now, hopefully things like this charter will help. And, you know, we'll just have to see how it goes. But ICB is signing up to anything which we think improves our professionalism. It makes bookkeepers stand ahead and shoulders above those people who are not involved with all these initiatives. Yeah, I mean, the bookkeepers that we had in the very early days, we had an idea of what they were doing, but that, as I said earlier, when we were talking about the technical advice, you know, you've come on leaps and bounds. Now, there are some people who are still out there who are recording data, and that's about as far as they want to go. That's okay, as long as you record data properly and you stick to the rules and you maintain standards. We're very happy to be there for you. But again, we've got so many of our members who've decided that they want to grow, they want to do more things. And I was talking to a lady yesterday who has got 5 members of staff, 120 odd clients. And she said, look, I'm pleased with what ICB's done for me. I'd like to put something back in. I'd be very happy to have a chat. And now, I love to have a chat as well, as you've noticed. I do tend to talk a little bit. But the point is, if you are one of those bookkeeping organizations, bookkeeping practices that is looking to grow, and you think you've got something to say, I'm not suggesting you do a presentation or anything like that, but talk to us. give me a call or drop us a line or something, rather, because we only find out what you're doing through the technical advice lines or meeting you or seeing you on a Zoom call or something or other when you tell us these things. That's what we're here for. We need to drain that information from you so that we can make it part of everything we do. Right.
There's one comment coming. I think this might have come in from the Facebook side, from Carla. Good afternoon, Carla, who says, it's funny, this is your could versus must and not. HMRC also puts should and might, not must or must not. Very smart to lead to uncertainty. Yeah. HMRC, as I said, are having a long discussion about guidance and advice at the moment and how much you can rely on it. And they do not want to put you must do this or you mustn't do that unless it's absolutely legislative to say that, because then they could be held down to what they're saying. So yeah, and of course, as Gary said earlier, the simple change of a word or a comma can change things. It's exactly the same with the queries that go to our HMRC. The slightest change can alter what their advice or guidance would be, and don't forget that that guidance may not always be put in retrospectively, because it can change, and if the guidance changes, it might not back retrospectively. So that's why they don't tie themselves in.
I can remember seeing an outtake. It was of an old movie, and there was a lady leaning against a tree, and standing next to her was a rather tall cowboy. And she was trying to get this line out, and they kept saying, cut, cut. And they tried to explain that she was doing it wrong. She was supposed to say, what is this thing called love? And she kept saying, what is this thing called love? And they couldn't get her to say it right. She kept thinking she was doing it right, and she wasn't. But it does change the meaning slightly.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think we're getting... Have we got any more queries? I
think we've answered them all now. The ones that I think we've covered everything that's gone through. I've done all the questions, and I think the chat line we've covered as well.
Yeah, that's all done. Finish on a film. Last minute idea on this. House Sitter. I don't know how many of you seen the film House Sitter. It's got Goldie Hawn and Steve Martin in it. I mention that because that is Mrs. C's favourite film. We have watched it so many times, and each time we watch it, there's something different in there. It's a good, fun film. It's a bit of nonsense, but it's lovely, and it doesn't hurt anybody, and it's great. And if you aren't going to be basking in the sunshine this weekend, look up House Sitter.
Excellent.
Are you done, Jackie?
Yes, I'm done for today. I've done all my bits. I've answered all the questions. Looking forward to a nice weekend.
Well, we rattled through an hour very, very quickly there. So thank you, everybody, for being on with us today, or whether you're listening to this in an hour's time or a day's time or a year's time or whatever. It was lovely to have your company, as always. And we look forward to seeing you next week, and when Jackie and I will once again be trying to entertain and advise and guide you.
Absolutely.
And Suzanne Proctor's just said, thanks, everyone. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you, Suzanne. I hope it's nice up there where you are. Bye, everybody. Have a nice time.
Bye, all. Have a nice weekend.